also across 46 other African countries via satellite. Many thanks for joining us. Those of you watching us on Facebook and on YouTube at Pan African Television, we are extremely grateful for your time. Let me run you through the topics we are discussing for the morning. Kenyan President orders review of MP's pay rise after outcry. Economic hardship bites as price hikes for water, electricity, fuel take toll on Ghanaians. This is the banner headline of the Insights newspaper. You grab a copy at any newspaper stand for just 4 Ghana cedis. You can read the story on there. Clocksack strike holds work. Public offices empty. Members demand implementation of new salary structure. This story has been captured on the front page of the Ghanaian Times. And then finally, anti-LGBTQ bill, Parliament had no basis. The Daybreak newspaper has captured this one. So these are the topics we have tabled for this morning's discussion. As usual, I'll implore you to be a part of the conversation. Let me know what your thoughts are on these topics. I'll be more than pleased to read them as the show progresses. I've been joined by Comrade Murtala Mohammed, Member of Parliament for the Tamale Central Constituency. Comrade, good morning. Many thanks for joining us. It's been a while on the morning show. Actually.
Yeah, it has.
On Monday, I had to ambush you and make sure you're here today. Thank you so much for coming. Right. Also, the General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, he also doubles as the Managing Editor of the Inside newspaper. Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr. is here. Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, so without further ado, let's get into the conversation. We'll start our story with the Kenyan situation. There's been lots of protests still ongoing, but and it appears that the Kenyan people are seeing results with regards to these protests. We are learning this morning that Kenya's President William Ruto has ordered a review of plans to raise the salaries of members of the cabinet and parliament following a public outcry. It comes a week after mass protests forced Mr. Ruto to drop a controversial finance bill that had included tax hikes. People began questioning how the salaries of politicians, including governors, could be raised when there was a supposed financial crisis. The pay increase of between 2% and 5% for all state officials, covering judges as well, was recommended by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. It issued a notice last year proposing that the increase take effect from the beginning of this month, which is July. But Public Service Minister Moses Kuria said he would not implement the increase as applies to the cabinet. Mr. Ruto abandoned plans to increase taxes after protesters complained they could not afford to pay them as they were already hit by the sharp increase in the cost of living. It's a long story, but I'll end it here and also permit Comrade Murtala Mohammed to share his initial thoughts on this particular subject matter.
Well, good morning, and good morning to Senior Comrade, and good morning to your cherished viewers, and most importantly, the good people of Tamale Central. I think that what we witness, or we are witnessing in Kenya, is a symptom of underestimating the resolve of any group of persons to demand that justice, fairness is given to them in terms of the governance architecture of any country. You know, Ruto was the vice president. You know, in Kenya they call it deputy president to Uhuru Kenyatta. Interestingly, when he was contesting to be elected as the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta didn't support his bid. And many people didn't understand why he did not support his bid. And I think that it is now very clear some of the things perhaps he saw, because haven't campaigned with him, haven't worked with him as his deputy, he felt that he was not fit for purpose. And Uhuru Kenyatta indeed made it very clearly that he didn't think that he was fit to lead Kenya. That is not to say that Uhuru Kenyatta is a saint, or that is not to say that Uhuru Kenyatta himself doesn't have some defects. He does have some defects, but the focus is on President Ruto. He came with lofty promises and indicating to the people that the country was disastrously run, even though he was an active participant in the so-called disaster that Kenya was run with. He came indicating to the people that they were spending so much money, and that if you look at the monies that were used for the purposes of the government itself was unacceptable. And his initial decisions and actions were that he reduced same, only for him to even go beyond what he condemned a year after. And I think that for me, it sends a signal, not just to Kenyan people, but everybody across the continent of Africa, that you can no longer take the people for granted. Some of the reasons for which these Gen Zs or young people are engaged in the demonstration, justified as it is one, corruption, two, maladministration, and three, joblessness. And I think that we can attribute same to this country. I say this because prior to the 2016 elections, this government, then candidate Nanado and his running mate Dr. Baumia, gave the people of this country tremendous hope and chastised President Mohammed's administration. And they used one, corruption, they used two, joblessness, and they used even three, something that was not existing, nepotism. Mind you, they claimed that President Mahama had appointed his family and friends, when we all knew at the time that there was only one family member who had, occupied office in the capacity of a deputy minister under President Mahama. Mind you, Joyce Bauer, nobody doubted or challenged her capacity and her ability to even be a minister. This was a lawyer in practice for 18 years before she was appointed as deputy minister. But the MPP made us understand and believe, or made Ghanaians believe, that President Mahama was running a nepotistic government. And it was not only limited to political actors, even those in academia. And they jumped on that same useless wagon and lied to the people of this country as a propaganda tool for the purposes of they changing the administration we had at that time. You remember Professor Adai? I mean, that ethnic chauvinist, without any evidence, because one expects those in academia, for you to make a conclusive statement, you should have some evidences for which such statements could be made. But he went to town with it. The media section of the Ghanaian media, a section that is profoundly corrupt, indeed joined the wagon, and they created the impression in the minds of the Ghanaian people that President Mahama ran a family and friends government, when it was only Joyce Bauer who had an appointment as a deputy minister in his administration. Another thing that we would want to juxtapose what President Mahama did in terms of these useless allegations without any basis and what we experienced under this administration. And you can liken same to Kenya because of some of the allegations Ruto made against a government in which he was an active participant and how he was going to do things differently. We have seen the most nepotistic government ever in the history of this country. The president has appointed, to the extent that he appointed his baby mamas. And I say baby mamas because his former girlfriend was appointed as ambassador to Czech Republic. And that is a fact. Appointed his own daughters to be heading institutions, and appointed all manner of people. 54 direct family members of President Nanado indeed were given appointment one way or the other. To the extent that the vice president, Dr. Baumia, appointed, to the extent they appointed even his father-in-law. Dr. Baumia's father-in-law was given an appointment. Dr. Baumia's brother-in-law was given an appointment. Mind you, Samira's father was made an ambassador. Dr. Samira's junior brother was appointed, and he's still an appointee under this government. So they knew that using nepotism, Ghanaians were going to buy into it, and it was exactly what Ruto did. Now, when it comes to the issue of corruption, what President Mahama administration choked as compared to what we experienced under this government, it is very clear that President Mahama administration did far better. As a matter of fact, corruption perception index, the highest this country has ever choked, happened under President Mahama when we had about 48%. That is the highest we have ever scored under the corruption perception index. In fact, the lowest President Mahama scored was 41, and that is 43, and that is what this government is celebrating. And Afrobarometer, if you look at the CDD Afrobarometer report, put this government as the most corrupt government ever in the history of this country, to the extent that Professor Jumaboidu, who happened to be a friend, a very long-time friend to President Nana Addo, when they asked him about Nana Addo's fight against corruption, he said, and I quote, "It's in tatters." So you realize that they knew that using corruption, which has always been the case in terms of changing administrations in this country, whether democratically leadership or military leadership, corruption has always been used as a justification for any change of government. Even Nkrumah, who was never corrupt, who you could not trace any corruption against him, the Buza Dankwa element, those criminal elements who overthrew Nkrumah in 1960, well, they use corruption as a basis for justification. And you can see similar things happening in Kenya, where the previous administration was accused for corruption, yet you have seen endemic corruption under the leadership of President Ruto. Another point has to do with the maladministration that we experience in terms of violations of the rights of people. All those things were made. And then let me just conclude on the basis of unemployment, because that has been one of the reasons why these Gen Zs are on the street. Under the NDC, all manner of propagandist tools were indeed introduced to justify how the NDC government was not doing well in terms of what? Job creation and the level of unemployment in this country. It is very apparent now that this government has done disastrous. This government, in terms of how they manage unemployment, is a disaster. And let's look at the statistics. The data under the NDC, unemployment was 6.8%. Today, the government-owned statistical figures, unemployment is 14.7%. Yet we were told that NAPCO and others created jobs, and we wondered how those jobs were created. We were told that there was a group called graduate unemployed. Today, we don't have that group, because at the time when they were making this group, this group was making a whole lot of noise, we said it was an MPP propagandist tool. So if you look at the data, the figures, the NDC did far better in terms of the reasons why the MPP felt that President Mohammed's administration needed to be truncated, and why the people of this country needed to vote them into power. So you see similar things happening in Kenya. So the people are wide awake. They are conscious of what happens, the promises you make. And for me, it's a signal also to political actors that you don't just make promises because you want to win an elections. You make promises conscious of the fact that they are promises that you think you can deliver. Even if you are unable to deliver on those promises, responsible governance expect that you should reach out to the people, sit with them, explain to them, and let them understand why you could not fulfill some of the promises you made. So I think that what is happening in Kenya, for me, is a signal to everybody. Look, I tell people, the Ghanaian parliament, we are the least paid. We are the least paid. That is not to justify how much is being paid to MPs in this country. Kenya, they used to be paid equivalent of almost $100,000. They used to be paid equivalent of almost $100,000. Today, if you look at, even there was a demonstration some years ago, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, when that demonstration happened, they reviewed the salary, and I'm told that they reviewed the salary, but, you know, occupied it with a lot of incentives and allowances, and virtually not a review. And I think that for the president to do some of these things he's doing, I believe he could have avoided them if he did them earlier. My last point has to do with his meddling in the geopolitics of the world on the issue of America and their relations with other countries. Specifically, this was a president who went to America, and Kenya, as a result of he being a poodle, if you like, to Joe Biden and the Western world, Kenya has been taken as, if you like, a non-member, or is it a non? They use a particular term, something NATO member. You know, if you can describe it as an associate member of NATO of a sort, which is not an European country, which is not a country in the West, but they have been given some recognition. Ceremonial distance. To what end? And he was so happy, lavishly. He was so happy, you know, and this was news. And I watched his engagement with the media. And when I watched the engagement, I saw someone who is very, very arrogant, and he was trying to tout as part of his achievement that Kenya is now recognized and respected globally. That is not the case. Kenya is being mocked because of the actions you have taken. Kenya is being mocked. I am told that the wife had to even organize a program and the state financed the program. You have ministers under his administration who attend churches and make donations of several hundreds of thousands of dollars, Kenyan shillings equivalent. And the question is, where are they making those monies? You can like him say, even in Ghana today, you have politicians who just in 2016 could not even rent rooms. Today they are building skyscrapers left, right, and center. And you have people who have suddenly become very rich. And people are not interested in finding out how they got those wealth. And I think that once people think that they can do what they want to do, what we experience in Kenya, we may experience same in many African countries. So I think that African leaders need to take a cue of what is happening in Kenya, that never again should they be attempting to take the people they rule for granted. People are wide awake, people are now conscious, and people are now very critical in terms of the questions they ask. Because these demonstrations we experienced in Kenya was not only limited to people who were anti-Ruto. You had even members, people who voted for him, who all felt that there is profound and unacceptable maladministration they experienced in Kenya, and therefore there was the need for something to be done. I think as I talk to you now, they are marching towards the State House, and that is the demand. The president is making a lot of concessions. As to whether those concessions will hold is another matter.
Right, thank you very much, Comrade Mutala Mami. And Nana Sapong is a member of the Movement for Change who just joined us. Nana, good morning. Good morning. Many thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Your initial thoughts on the Kenyan issue?
Yes, good morning to your viewers and my senior colleagues. Kenya has been an interesting case study for advanced democracy in my view in Africa. I think that anybody who sets to say that he or she didn't see this coming to Kenya would have not been following the politics of Kenya. The way and manner in which the current president came into power should tell us that there was so much that was expected of him. The youth of Kenya had so much hope, believe and trust in him. They expected him to do more. If you compare the unemployment rate before and now, then you would notice that he's practically done nothing to help improve the livelihood of the youth. And when the youth in a particular country are idle and they struggle to make ends meet, the little thing would trigger anger. And unlike widows in the West Africa, the West African countries are not so much, we are very calm.
We've seen
because we've seen a lot of blood and we do not want to see them again. We're very calm. I mean, if you compare to what is happening in Kenya now, what is happening in Ghana, a worse thing could have happened here. Looking at the unemployment rate, looking at the nuisance taxes we have in our system, it's how many years beyond COVID and we're still taking taxes on COVID. And you think if it was Kenya, they would sit to look. What triggered what is happening actually happens to be the taxes that he was trying to introduce. We are not working. We are finding it hard to make ends meet. We can afford 3 square meals a day. And you want to introduce new taxes. How then do we survive? You understand? So there are a whole lot of things that have come into being that is causing this brouhaha in Kenya. But you see, it is hard time Africans take serious look into having a lifestyle audit. If you take a look into the great transformational plan that was launched by Alan Chumantin, there is an aspect that talks about the mindset change. Before I come to that, in dealing with corruption, which is one of the major issues that has been at the causes of what is happening in Kenya, is corruption. In dealing with it, we have to take into consideration the lifestyle audit of individuals who are given power, of individuals who come into politics. It is not just about the talk. It's about putting in measures to ensure that we walk the talk. And so, as my senior brother said, you would find people who have just come into politics, who have never received salaries before, who've never worked before, aside their national service. And even with their national service, they did it in political offices. And then today they are able to afford V8s, they are able to afford houses in airport residentials and East Lagos and the Spintex. And you would ask yourself, are these 35, 40-year-old boys able to afford it if they were going to be working in the same environments we work? You would have to ask yourself all of these questions. And they are in the minority. And so if we the masses see the kind of life they are living, and we can't afford food, just yesterday's rains affected people. There are videos on my phone. People's homes were flooded just because of uncompleted government projects and roads that contractors are not taking serious and do not have that sense of urgency. Their homes are flooded, and you find these young men and women who've been able to afford to rent a single room, who've been able to afford to buy some few gadgets in their rooms, and these rooms are flooded, and you have their age mates who are living a kind of life which they cannot account for. Definitely, this kind of stance will be triggered. I mean, in my view, I think that we need to have a certain level of audit. We need to take our citizens serious. There is this funny commentary that is going around that after the Kenyan president came to Ghana, he also became arrogant and refused to hear. You know, they say it and we all laugh about it. But you see, as a president, as a leader, one thing you need to take seriously is the voice of the people. You do not wait to see what the people can do. I read the news yesterday that he's actually denied being the cause of the death of the young people during the attack on their parliament. I think 20, I don't know if I've forgotten, 20 people, young men or so, 30. Now you come out to tell us that you have no hands in it. I mean, you didn't cause it because they could have used another medium to push their grievances. In any case, would he have listened to these young men if they have made press statements and held press conferences? Of which some of them did. They had sent signals that, listen, if you take this into Parliament, if you try to push it, this will be the consequence. All of what they tried to do fell on deaf ears. And this, what is happening in Kenya, should be a signal to all African countries. We cannot put you in leadership positions. We cannot put our resources in your hands. We cannot give you our revenue. And you would spend it the way you want to spend it. You would impose things on us as if you are the only one that has brains in your head. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. There would be a time that presidents will be made to resign 24 hours after swearing the oath of office. We would make them resign. We would make them go home. The youth are getting angry. day by day. I mean, let's take our own country. Let's take our immediate environment. How many of your brothers, and there's a conversation, have been unemployed for the past 6, 7, 8, 9 years? I know Pan-Africa pays you very well, at least. But be honest in your heart. Can your salary afford a V8? Can you even fuel it? But we have people who just walk around, and because they are able to go on social media and insult, they drive in V8s. Doesn't it make you angry when you see them? Your producer had been on me since 4 a.m. because there was a miscommunication. So he wanted to make sure that this thing happened since 4 a.m. He's been awake. I don't know what time he's going to close. You would have somebody who is still sleeping right now. And just because you're the one who was disturbing me, you see. Then we have people who will just be sleeping. They wake up 12 noon, go on social media, find myself, Uncle Pratt, and just insult. Once you insult and you take screenshot and you send, but you are served well. And hard-working youth are out there, rain or shine, and their salaries cannot even afford. Today they will be, I don't know if it's happened already, they're going to increase fuel prices and other and it's always going up, but our salaries are the same. Colosac is on strike, and we are pretending we don't know. I don't know if I'm the only one who have not heard it, but I've not heard any media house even discuss it.
Actually, part of our conversation.
What I say now, I mean, we are talking about lives here. We are talking about hungry people. Each day and night, people are getting angry. And the funny aspect of Ghanaian life is that the more we get angry, the more we keep quiet. Those who've seen some of the things that happened in the 70s and in the 80s, I happened to be in the midst of them somewhere 3 days ago when Uncle Pratt had the opportunity of auctioning one of the most insightful history books by Donata. I happened to have a discussion with some of these senior citizens, and they said, you see the way Ghanaians are quiet, it's like a dynamite. It just comes once, boom, and you can't stop it. Dollar is almost 16 Ghana cedis. They come and sit on radio and TV and tell us that is not it. It's not up to 15 cedis. So we should go and we should not do propaganda about it. But the reality, they try to sweep it under the carpet. And Ghanaians are quiet. They are quiet because they are extremely angry. Did we ever think that Kenya would just get up one day and just get into this mess? No. We should take a cue. And for us, we are fortunate. It's just about 5 months to the elections. I don't consider the last month as part of it, because if what they sent to the parliament doesn't work, it means we're still going to have our elections on the 7th of December. So we're about 5 months into the elections. So let's pray that we are able to keep our cool, walk into December 7th and do the needful. But until then, the government would have to take us serious. Kenya is not far from Ghana.
Thank you very much, Nana Yasapan. Let me come to Comrade Pratt.
Well, President Ruto has announced that proposed increment in the emoluments of parliamentarians and other political office holders will be suspended. But I think that does not resolve any of the problems in Kenya. First, I mean, throughout perhaps the world or Africa, how many political office holders actually depend on their salaries? So stopping salary increments and so on does not address the question of opulence and the arrogance that we see. Besides, the demonstration against Ruto is continuing in earnest. Yesterday, there were massive demonstrations still in Kenya and so on. And the issue is not about the opulence and arrogance of ministers and public office holders now. The issue, the primary issue, is about accounting for the lives of those who have died in the protests and punishing those who are responsible for injuring more than, 100,000 people, as we are told. That's one of the main issues now. In any case, if Ruto's government knew that cutting the emoluments of public office holders could bring in some money to address Kenya's insolvency, why did he then decide to impose taxes on bread and so on? I mean, it simply doesn't make sense at all. Now, I'm worried by some of the narrations about what is happening in Kenya. First, the impression that these demonstrations are just about tax hikes is completely false. The Kenyan people, united and so on, are struggling against the new Liberal Party to development. It's not about taxes at all. It's not about taxes. It's about the new Liberal Party development, which is spearheaded by the IMF and the World Bank, which has led to exacerbating the hardships of people, you understand? Which has led to a freeze on employment in the public sector, which has led to massive devaluations of our currencies in Africa, which has led to the privatization of state enterprises, which has led to the limitation of access to social services like education, health, and so on. That is what the people of Kenya are protesting against. Another narrative which is troublesome is the narrative that this is a youth affair. It is not. It's not a youth affair. You see, somehow the impression is being created that young people have the answers to our problems and so on. Is that true? Look, there are very old people in our society who are extremely stupid, who do not understand the problems that confront our society. They are old people. But there are also young people who are extremely stupid and have no solution to the problems that confront us. So the issue is not about age. The issue is about what solutions work and what solutions don't work. The issue is about whether we should privatize state enterprises or we should not privatize state enterprises. And if you consider that issue, there are young people who think that the best thing we can do is to sell off all the state enterprises. They are wrong. They are young and wrong. There are older people who think that we should continue with this madness of privatization of state enterprises. They are old and they are wrong. You understand? Recently, one of the issues we've had to deal with has been the issue of the sale of snake hotels and so on. There are young people who support it, and there are old people who support it. If you look at what is happening in our country today, a lot of the propagandists of the new patriotic party are young people. They have no problem with what is happening. They want it to continue and so on. So I think we should get it right. Our objective must be to unite all of our people in the different age categories. Our objective must be to unite all of our people in spite of the agenda. Our objective must be to unite all of our people in spite of their ethnic background and so on, to build a united Ghana, a united Ghana opposed to the new liberal order, a united Ghana which is focused on the transformative agenda of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the broad Pan-African movement. A united Ghana which insists that Ghanaian resources must be owned by the Ghanaian people and exploited for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. That is where we should be pushing.
Right, thank you very much, Comrade Pratt. You too can be a part of the conversation. Join us. Text line is open. Make sure you send in your messages. Please do not call the text line, I beg you. Just leave a message. Also, we are live on Facebook at facebook.com/Pan-African Television. Make sure you join us there if you can't watch from your television sets. Alternatively, too, we are live and active on YouTube. You can join us on YouTube. Now, let's proceed to our next topic for conversation, and that is actually the banner headline of today's edition of the Insight newspaper. As you can see, economic hardship bites as price hikes for water, electricity, fuel take toll on Ghanaians with prepaid meters running like Usain Bolt. That is the story as captured by today's edition of the Insight newspaper. Of course, in the Kenyan conversation, Comrade Mutala made brief comments about the fact that we are seeing the price hikes in terms of utilities, water, electricity, fuel. I think for water and electricity, they've already taken effect. And I know for sure that fuel would also add to it soon. But for all of these things, a hike in all of these things sees repercussions in almost every sector of the economy. Comrade Mutala.
Well, it's important for us to understand that in every state there are certain essential commodities that under no circumstance should be privatized or attempted to be privatized. It's very, very important. And I say this because there have been a lot of debate and discussion around the sustainability of Ghana Water Company and the Electricity Company of Ghana. And the debate have always been, one, the capacity of these essential state institutions that are supposed to render some services to the people of this country, whether they are able to do so. And the question is that why are they not able to effectively deliver the services that they are supposed to deliver to the Ghanaian people? A lot of them, at least the two I have mentioned, are hugely indebted. And the indebtedness border on inefficiency as to how these two state institutions are run. The reason why I say that they must not be privatized or attempted to be privatized is because of the necessity and the service that they provide. Look, water is life. Electricity is life to a very large extent, because once you have adequate electricity, it helps businesses, it helps provide jobs, and it helps sustain people. So if you are seeking to privatize such, you definitely are going to have a lot of problems. Now, why should we blame the inefficiency of how those institutions are run on the ordinary Ghanaian? I don't think that people are averse with paying the right taxes, or if you like, the right monies for services to be delivered. People have no problem even paying taxes. People have no problem paying adequate and required monies for the purposes of the services to be delivered. But people are concerned that when such payments are made, the services that are delivered are not commensurate with the monies they pay. And I think that is why people have problems. We are being told that over 25% of the water that is produced goes waste. We are being told. And the waste or the wastage of that 25% is not occasioned by the people for whom the services are rendered to. It is because of how inefficient the institution is run. Now, government seeks, through these institutions, to make up that deficit from the monies they charge people to pay. Look, if I tell you the amount of money I pay for electricity, virtually every 2 weeks you'll be shocked. I hardly sit at home. We live, and I'm not a user of air conditioning so much, to be very honest with you. But the prepay you pay, but there was an incident I had. I always buy power ahead of time. So usually I don't wait till the power runs out completely and then I'll go and buy. So anytime, most often when I'm going home, I'll stop by. Sometimes I'll check. I have a contact of the vendor from whom I buy the power. I'll call, check and see whether I still have credit. So when the vendor checks, and then he will tell you that, okay, you have this credit. One day, I was just driving home. I went to buy power, and I wanted to buy 500. Only for me to be told that there was a difference. Yes, only for me to be told. And I buy it like virtually every week.
Okay.
No, not a month. Usually, I buy, when I buy, I don't wait till the power runs out, because
5 days.
Yeah, it can run out in the night. So usually, I'll just call, do I still have credit? Because I've experienced that about 2 times. And I don't want to experience that, if for nothing at all, the kids. So anytime I'll call, do I still have credit? They said, then I'll send Momo, I want to buy this. That's how I buy. One day I was just driving home, and I decided to just stop over and check, and then. So I wanted to buy like 500. And the guy said, oh, you have, when I paid the 500 Ghana cedis, they told me that I have only just, is it 78 Ghana cedis power? I said, what? They said there was a credit. What's the name? Is it a credit, right?
Yes.
And I said, how?
It means you are owing them. So
I said, how?
Money.
I'm not using a fixed line. I'm using prepaid. So why should I have a debt on my this? And then the last time I bought was less than a week, and I'm coming to just top up, only for me to be told. In fact, I called the EC boss. What's the name? Mr. Mahama. I called him, and I protested. I said, this is what is happening. And I said, I might not be the only person who is experiencing this. And the vendor told me that several people have experienced that. Several people have experienced that. So these are some of the inefficiencies we are talking about. Now, because we may have a privileged position to be able to protest, there are many people out there who don't have the privilege we have. And they will not be able to protest. Again, illegal connection. Whose responsibility is it to check that the illegal connection stops? Is it the responsibility of those of us who are paying, or the responsibility of those who run those facilities? Now, when people are made to pay huge sums of money, people expect the services delivered to them to be commensurated with the monies they do what they pay. Another very important point has to do with the taxes we pay on some of this. The electricity, the build-up alone, the taxes people pay. Go and take your electricity bill. You have COVID levy on it. There is COVID levy on everything. We were made to understand that government went in to borrow money because of COVID. And we got about $3 billion from the IMF. Got over $1 billion from the World Bank, from the European Union. Dipped our hands into the state coffers and took money. We were made to understand that the government was providing free electricity and water for baseline consumers. I never benefited from the free electricity. I never benefited because of the gadgets I use in my house or the facilities there. I was beyond those who should benefit. But I am being made to pay. I understand that, yes, the fact that I didn't benefit from it, and the fact that those who are at the lower ebb of our income structure, they were made to pay. We were provided this thing, so-called free electricity and water, because of the prevailing circumstance at the time. And the justification to use our name, to borrow the money that government borrowed, monies that we will be paying, not President Nanado, and maybe for all you know, by the time Ghanian finished paying it, he may not even be around any longer. Or many of us may not be around any longer. But that becomes a debt on the state. We were made to understand that they were using our name to borrow the money for on our behalf because of the circumstances. You did this, and you provide so-called free water and free electricity, only for us to be made to pay. And I have been asking this question. As a matter of fact, I filed a question in Parliament about 3 times, inviting the Minister for Finance to appear before Parliament to explain to the people of this country how much they have taken so far in the name of the COVID levy, because for you to institute a tax regime, there should be a justification why you are doing it. The justification government provided for the purposes of the COVID levy was to take care of the water, the free water and free electricity they provided to the people of this country. So let's know how much you have collected so far. and tell us how much you spent for the purposes of free water and free electricity, so that we'll be able to know how much you have collected, whether indeed we have finished paying the monies for which you provided us with the free water and the free electricity. We have been told how much government spent to provide the free water and the free electricity, but we are not still being told how much they have collected so far. You go everywhere, even at the airport, there is COVID living. These cement producers, the hullabaloo and then the controversy they have with government, which some of us feel that government is trying to deflate the issue. Government is not willing to tell us this is the role we can also play to reduce the cement prices. Nobody is saying the cement prices are low. We are all feeling the brunt. But don't try to push the blame entirely on cement manufacturers without telling us the role you can also play. So the point I'm making is that if you look at what the price build up, there is COVID levy. Buy a bag of cement, there is COVID levy on it. So are we going to pay that COVID levy perpetually? Perpetually. There is no transparency. When I filed this question, I filed the questions with other questions when the Minister for Finance appeared, because it was how much they have collected so far for this COVID levy, and also how much the state has collected as a result of our sale of excess power to our neighbors. When he appeared before Parliament, he answered the question of the monies we generate as a result of the excess power we sell to our neighbors, and that we're making over $140 million every year. Now, this question, he said he didn't have the answers yet. I filed the question again, excuses upon excuses. So if widows who are supposed to be the people representatives, we demand answers for and on behalf of the people we represent, the arrogance, the condescending attitude that is shown to us, they are not willing to answer. As I talk to you, I filed the question again. Maybe perhaps with this new minister, he'll be able to tell us. Because assuming we have paid more than government is supposed to collect, that will amount to extorting the people of this country. That would amount to criminality. Because if, for example, you spend 100 million Ghana cedis providing free water and free electricity, and as a result of the COVID levy you have imposed, we have paid more than 300 million Ghana cedis, that would amount to extorting the people of this country. So I'm saying that those facilities, those very important, services that the state must render to the people of this country, the state must take steps to reduce or perhaps eliminate the inefficiency, eliminate the corruption. And that for me is significant. We've had contracts that have been awarded under the ECG, under the Ministry of Energy, supervised by the Minister for Energy. So if there is this alleged corruption and malfeasance that are going on in such institutions, don't you think that it should be justified for people to demand? Because once you have electricity prices going high, it affects everything. Forget of even the domestic use. People engage in their small businesses, fuel prices, it affects everything because it's a form of an indirect tax. And in an indirect tax, the one paying the tax doesn't, face the brunt. It is transferred to the final consumer. And that is why when such essential commodities, taxes on them are higher, it affects every facet of the Ghanaian society and the livelihood of the people.
Right, thank you, Comrade.
Well, brother, I think that Honorable has said a lot. And mostly when I hear MPs talk like this, I am happy. They talk like this when it's closer to elections. Well, we'll box all of them into one box. There is a saying in Dagbani, it says that
I see.
You understand? I don't know how to interpret it.
Eat that lies embarrasses a patriot and reduces your development in society.
So at this point, he has to tell the truth. See, the issue about these levies and taxes has practically an impact in all we do as people. It has a direct impact on livelihood. sometimes it's embarrassing to say, but when there are price hikes or increases in prices and everything, those who do not have restrooms in their houses and they go to use their VIPs, they also go there and prices have increased. I don't know the last time you used the VIP to travel to Kumasi, but when you get to Linda Door and you have gotten down to P, you will notice that the price of using the arrest place,
I did it was 1 city.
Medase, just to go and pee.
But what pure water is 50 pesos to pass through it.
You understand? So everything is affected. But let's ask ourselves this question: why the price increases? What is the cause of the prices being increased? Electricity, water, what was the other one? Fuel. Why are we increasing all of these prices? If you have listened to the arguments being made from experts to people who are in that business and all that, two things they will tell you. One, exchange rate. They will tell you that they use a dollar to buy and they use the dollar to pay their service providers and all of that. Two, they will tell you the cost of operational cost. So if we have an economy that is not able to control exchange rate, prices would always increase. When you have an economy that does not have control over its own operations, monetary operations, it means that the operational cost in every other sector would be affected. This is basic principle. Inti se ona mami na ose wada ade besa so obi abeko ni fie obi abeko so kudidi obeko di amayare. So if the fundamentals are weak, some of these things would expose you. When Honorable said his father question, I was laughing. You know why I was laughing? Because they will come and speak English to you. You filed a question, they would speak English to you. The reality will not be told. If government is serious in dealing with these issues, or if there would be any government that would be serious in dealing with these issues, there are two things they will deal with first. To look at our tax regime, to ensure that all those nuisance taxes are taken away. I don't know if you had a copy of the Great Transformational Plan. Oh, I'll bring you a copy. Don't worry, I'll bring you a copy. You read it. We will be coming to power and we will need, that time you still be in Parliament, we will still need that. So, we are proposing a review of our tax regime to abolish most of the tax that we have on our system. I mean, we still have Ghana Health Service disinfection fee. When was the last time your area was disinfected? Yet we pay. We have, what's the name, this COVID tax, this COVID levy. There's another one I'm trying to locate where it is. The name is so funny. Is at the ports. And and that those monies, surprisingly, the companies that are supposed to be doing those exercises for which those revenues are being collected and given to, they do not do it, but the monies are deducted as source. We don't account for it. And you think that at the end of the day, prices will not go up? Prices will definitely go up. The cost of operations. I was talking about wastage. That is true. Myself and you have a responsibility as citizens, not as spectators, but as citizens, that when we see somebody who is illegally connected to water, illegally connected to electricity, we are supposed to report. But would you report your brother who is unemployed and staying home to whichever authority? No. And that is why we always have people protecting some of these bad nuts in our society. It is wrong. I mean, without any qualification, it's wrong. But as human beings as we are, it will be difficult that you have a tenant in your house who is taking water free, taking electricity free, and you would go and report the person. But if we have been able to set things right, everything will be set on. And that is how it is. So I think the government's got a lot to do. In my view, as for these operations, we have to look into it. One other issue also has to do with optimizing the revenues being collected. We cannot continue the way we are going. We cannot keep burdening the fewer people, the fewer items, because you know that those are essentials. They would always put these taxes on fuels, on electricity, on water, because that is the way a lazy man works. They know you would always want to buy water, have water in your house. They know you would always want to have fuel because you have to drive to work, drive home, keep your gent running. They know you will need electricity to keep an African TV on for all of us to view. And so when they have put those taxes on these few items, you have no other but to pay. But there are other things that we have to look at. Have we actually looked at how much government loses on property rates? Have we looked at how much government loses on exemptions? Have we looked at how much government loses on other items that could have easily been taxed? We should have a look at these things. I believe that the Ministry of Finance and whoever that is in charge of our tax regime need to sit down well and look at some of these things. My very last take would be that, listen, leadership. Leadership. If you have a leader who has a well-defined vision, if you have a leader who has focus and is determined for a transformation, then you would have a person who would actually put down on the table a plan to moving the nation from where it stands now to another level. Leadership is key. Aside all of this, it will take a leader to be able to weave well all of these ideas that we have brought up. It will take a leader to listen and understand, to digest and be able to come up with an implementation strategy to be able to achieve these things. If not, we would go back and forth of it. Because I mean, some of these, if you go to Ghana Water, what's the gentleman's name? Clifford. They will tell you that the cost of cleaning the water we have now has quadrupled to be able for us to get clean water to drink and to use. What is causing it? Is it the machines that are old? Is it the galamsey? how long would we be looking onto old machines, old technology, galamsey, and keep burdening the citizens to pay? Myself and you, we've never been to Galamsey site. In Tamale, we don't have Galamsey. So why should we suffer it? It will take a leader to weave these things well and to come up with better solutions. And that is what we need.
Thank you. I'll read a few messages before I come to Comic Pratt. Samson Vance says, bless, if I were the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, would withdraw from the December 7 elections. The country is in shambles and a mess. Only Reagan can save the NPP, but wallahi, if they try, this country will go beyond Kenya. Sami and Adenta. Thank you so much for your message. This one here says that Amalasa from Tamale, say hello to Honorable Mutala from. In fact, we are so tired of these unnecessary increments that we just don't care anymore. So they should continue to increase, while we're also praying hard for December 7 to come so we can regain our second independence. Thank you, Alasa, for your message, and good morning to the good people of Tamale who are glued to their TV sets, particularly watching their Member of Parliament. Good morning, Pan-African TV. What is really happening with a continent called Africa? The last time in my country, Sierra Leone, there was a demonstration about the living conditions, and to everyone's surprise, my president was quick to call it citizenry terrorism. Again, he manipulated the 24 June 2023 elections and is still bragging to stay in power as against the will of the people. So is this the Africa we are yearning to see in the 21st century? John Kamara sent this all the way from Sierra Leone. And thank you so much to all of you watching from other parts of the continent. We are in 46 other African countries, so it's pretty axiomatic that lots of you will be watching from Nigeria, Kenya, and all these other African countries. We're extremely grateful. Alaji Hamza from Pig Farm says, good morning, my brother. In my humble opinion, I don't think any reasonable and thinking person should blame the good people of Kenya for what has happened in Kenya. President Ruto and his government has pushed the people of Kenya to the wall, and it was time for them to fight for their rights. The impunity of President Ruto in Kenya is becoming one too many. They should listen to the voices of the masses. Trust me, the day of reckoning is getting closer. President Nanado and Dr. Bawumia must learn to listen to the voices of the masses. Hardship has moved from bad to worse, and they must do something about that to prevent what happened in Kenya from happening in Ghana. Honorable Mutala, I salute you for your brilliant submission this morning. We are so proud of it. Thank you, Alaji Hamza, for your message. I'll read this one, which says that please ask Honorable Mutala whether Parliament will allow the government to give the National Peace Council, who are demanding $1 million from government for election activities, from James Kumasi. Is that true?
Well, I'm yet to see but that would be outrageous.
Right. Now let me come to Comic Pratt.
Well, there's no doubt at all that many of the people in this country and in Africa generally are suffering hardship. I go to the market quite often, and the prices I'm seeing in the market is shocking. I mean, you have one tomato costing 5 cedis. Not too long ago, one okra was costing 10 cedis. Now here is 1 cedi, and so on. But the indicators are very worrying. The price of kinky has gone from 50 pesos to 5 cedis, in a spate of 4 months. Everything has become so very expensive. Then you have electricity tariffs and water tariffs, and then petroleum prices and so on. Now, for me, the most important question to ask is, why are we here? That's all. Why are we here? Now, we are here simply because we have overborrowed and run the country into insolvency. And we've gone to the IMF for a bailout, the 17th time. And the IMF is simply telling us that, look, cut your expenditure, raise taxes so that you can generate resources to pay your loans. That's all. All of this increase in taxes and so on, what are they meant to do? They are meant to put us in a position where we can pay the loans, repay the loans that we have borrowed. Okay. Now, if you look at the state of the national economy, the best picture you have is when you look at the fact that we are spending 128% of total national revenue on debt servicing, debt repayment, and public sector emoluments. It tells the whole story. You understand? Now, why should we be here? First of all, the debts are unpayable. We should not be paying the debts. We should not be paying the debts because these debts, the loans we got, were not based on any sound examination of our economic situation and so on. They were based simply on the promotion of foreign policy objectives of the West. When IMF and World Bank were giving Mobutu Sese Seko's government lots and lots of loans, they knew that those loans could not be repaid. But they gave Mobutu Sese Seko's government a lot of loans, knowing fully well that he couldn't pay, because they wanted Zaire or Congo to become the bastion against communism in Africa. Now that's a foreign policy objective of the US, that's a foreign policy objective of NATO. So when you give these monies in order to promote your foreign policy objectives, why should the poor African people be paying for it? I mean, when we went to the IMF for the 17th bailout, something very significant happened. You recall that Western ambassadors went around Ghana saying that, look, if we want to get a good deal, then our president should not sign the anti-gay bill. You remember? That's the objective. That's their foreign policy objective. So we are now boasting about the second tranche or so of $360 million and so on. It didn't come because we have the capacity to repay. It didn't come because the economic indicators are improving. It came because the president simply refused to sign the anti-gay bill, which is an imposition by the US, which has been repeated over and over again by the ambassador here. You know, some of the Western ambassadors actually warned the president. So if you bring money into, exactly, if you bring money into our economy in order to achieve your own objectives, why do you call upon us to pay? And why do you squeeze our people to the extent that we see today to repay loans that you came to spend to achieve your own objectives? So I fully agree with Comandante Fidel Castro that these loans should not be paid. They are not payable. We shouldn't pay them. I fully agree with the resolution of the Pan-African Congress in 1945, which said clearly that we should own our resources and exploit the resources for our own benefit. You understand? So these hardships could be avoided. These hardships are things that we can deal with if we change the paradigm of development. And if we break away from the stranglehold of imperialism, then we can deal with these hardships.
Thank you. I'll do a few more messages, then we proceed to our next topic for conversation. Good morning, Pan-African TV. My name is Alan Barnes from Pishegu, Karaga constituency. My regards to Comrade Kwesi Pratt, Comrade Mutala, and Nanaya Sapon. Please, I need Mr. Nanaya Sapon's contact. Okay. This one here also says that the hardship in Ghana is too much. We are tired. All right, thank you. You didn't tell me your name. Good morning, bless. With people like Katie Ahmad in governance, it's very easy for Ghana to be like Kenya or Haiti. BB from Accra sent this one. Thank you, BB, for your message. Good morning, bless. Randolph Dauphin, watching from Freetown in Sierra Leone. The hardship is everywhere, not only in Ghana, but one good thing is our government in Sierra Leone has done is to reduce fuel pump prices. Okay, thank you, Randolph Dauphin, and for your message. Good morning, bless. Good morning, bless. Let our leaders know that what is going on in Kenya is a wake-up call for them to do the right thing for the people of Ghana. Eliasu from Tamale Central. Thank you, Eliasu, for your message. This one here also says, for 9 years in government, is now that they want to bring a bill to Parliament on free senior high by Napoleon Bonaparte in Tumusankofa Beach. Thank you, Napoleon, for your message. Right. Please keep on sending them. I'll try my best possible to read some more before we come to the end of the show. But let's look at our next topic for conversation. Clocksack, they are on strike. Certain people have accused them, and they are saying that this strike particularly is politically motivated because we're in an election year. They have come out to debunk that. They say that they are neutral, and of course they'll make demands as long as they feel that they are in a tight corner as a group. And Nana, you made initial comments on Clocksack, so I think it's only right that I start this conversation with you.
Yes, Clocksack. And during the introduction of this question, I'm surprised anybody would want to accuse them of the strike being politically motivated. I do not think that when hunger is coming to knock at your door, it tells you whether it is NDC or it is MPP. I do not think that last week when I went to the market to go and buy tomatoes with my wife, and we paid 150 Ghana cedis, and when we came home and we counted the fruits, we got 42 or 45. If I calculate an add and
that was 150 cedis. Wow. So that's like more than about 7 cedis for one.
And then somebody brings up a video and tells me that he was driving from Kumasi to Accra, passed through a certain village where they do tomato farming. And then the person brings up the video and says that he's buying a whole pan of tomatoes for 50 cedis. So I sent a comment. I said he should pack his things from Accra and go and stay there. What he has here, when hardship is knocking at your door, it doesn't ask you your political affiliation. Clocksack goes beyond the few 4, 5, 6, 7 national executives, the general secretary who are there. Clocksack there are those people out there who have served Ghana for so many years. And you who have not worked in your life before would come to tell them that they are going on strike because it is politically motivated. That is an insult. This Clocksack strike thing didn't start today. In 2022, they went on strike. Was 2022 an election year?
It wasn't.
When they went on strike, I remember very well that government called them to a round table. We had the Minister of Finance, the Labor and Employment, and all of those people. And then they signed an MOU, if my memory serves me right. They signed an MOU, and government actually admitted and agreed to the implementation of the new salary structure, which was supposed to have taken effect in January 2023, if I may recall, in January 2023. I think this thing was done in May 2022, and it should have taken effect in January 2023. 1.5 years down the line, you have not implemented the structure. You have not communicated anything to COSAC. Only for them to go on strike, and then the response government communicators will give them is that the strike is politically motivated. In any case, prior to 2016, COSAC and other labor unions went on demonstrations and on strike, not less than 12 or so in this country. Was it politically motivated? Let's get serious at a point in this country. Our brothers and sisters, our fathers and mothers who are in the civil service are complaining. Yeah. Kofa pension structure in an area. Take a very critical look at it and ask yourself, how many of these people would even be able to survive on how much SNIT pays them when they go on retirement? Go there and ask the middle managers within the service, those who have done 5, 6 to 10 years in the service. Ask how much they are being paid. I said it on one of the platforms many weeks ago. I said that in Ghana, once you work in the civil service or public service and you survive and you're able to buy a car and go and come up and down and live a certain kind of life, we should keep praying for you. How much is the salary of a chief director? I mean, yes, sure, say on the surface of the document, on their payroll, is up to 10,000. So this, I don't think it's up to 10,000. So if the overall boss at the ministry, forget the minister is not, he's just a policy, a political head. If his is not up to 10K, bring it down a step. And they are just crying and telling government that the little that we deserve, the little that we are working hard for, give it to us. And that is another problem. Meanwhile, from 2022, when they had first met with government over the new salary structure, things have kept increasing. Fuel have increased, inflation, the water, utilities, everything has gone up. It is only in Ghana that all other things goes up except for salaries. And when you would ask, they will tell you that during the beginning of the year, they increased daily wage. Minimum wage, yes. I think that COSAC deserves some level of respect. Now, is it not surprising to you that their strike has not actually affected many political discussions? If it were any other country, that the biggest labor union, because COSAC is the biggest, the rest come together, they form TUC. But if you want they control everything. Go to the ministries today and see. The whole place is shut down. So you would have NAT, you have NAGRAT. But when you have issues now and you go to the ministries, the people who are supposed to serve you, they are not there. So even if you are greater in numbers, they are bigger. Across the nation, I think the district assemblies and all of those people, they all fall under COSAC. And it has not still made news. Just because some people think that everything in Ghana should be politicized. No. we barely have some few months to elections. What they are fighting for, whether this current government does it or as they are leaving, they don't, the next administration that comes, of course I pray that Alan Chemati becomes president, we will still have to sit with them. Because you see, what they have put before government and the then Minister of Finance and his people accepted does not contain political colors. CLOSAC is not NPP, is not NDC. CLOSAC is not CPP, it is not Movement for Change. CLOSAC is CLOSAC. And even in my view, I was saying it yesterday on another platform that the labor unions are not angry enough. They are not angry enough. Because if they were angry, no minister would step foot in the office today. If they were angry enough, there would be no movement of government vehicles on our streets, including that of our Speaker of Parliament, including that of our Chief Justice, including that of our... No vehicle would move if they were angry enough. You see, we have to get to a point where when labor speaks, we should listen. They should be respected enough to be called and sat at the table with. When discussions with them are agreed upon, it should be implemented. 1.5 years. Are they doing a review? But let me just even ask Honorable. Do you think that salary review of our MPs and the executive, when it comes to Parliament and it is agreed upon, it takes up to a year for implementation? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. When Ghana Police Service and the armed forces, they sit and they request for salary increment, and government agrees on it, does it take up to a year for implementation? It doesn't. I do not know the procedures in some of these things, but what I know is that once it's done and it's agreed upon and goes through the processes of Parliament and all that and gets to Ministry of Finance for implementation, it should not take 1.5 years. I think that Ghanaians would have to add their voice. If you won't do it, you won't do it. But if you would do it, it shouldn't take you up to 1.5 years to implement.
Right. Thank you very much.
Well, what we are experiencing is a betrayal of trust. And I describe it as a betrayal of trust because if there was an agreement or an understanding in which, a memorandum of understanding was actually signed by the parties, in this case, CLOSAC, leadership representing the members and also government, there can't be any justification why government is failing to honor that obligation. Now, even if you are finding it difficult to honor the obligation because of the economic circumstances, which is occasioned by your maladministration, corruption, and the gross and crass incompetence that is associated with this government, the people are humans in their understanding. It should have been good the government had audience with them. Part of their concerns are that they have been treated with disdain and so much disrespect. Yeah. I agree that CLOSAC are the largest bloc as far as, labor unions are concerned in this country. And the reason why they have always, and there will always be demand for salary adjustment is because of the prevailing economic circumstances. If the economy is doing well, and I don't think that people would make such demands so much. If the economy is doing well, government himself will go ahead to improve the salaries of civil servants and public servants and all those who are supposed to be operating under the government structure. But if the economy is not doing well, you find some of these agitations, and there will come time and again. Look, every civil servant, if you take your salary, civil servants spend over 40% of their salary on food alone. In fact, if not more. I'm just even talking of food. Ideally, that is one thing they shouldn't be spending much money on. So if you spend almost 40% of your salary on food, how much will be left for services such as electricity and water? And all these services, as we discussed earlier, the cost of getting those services are escalating every single day. So at the end of the day, you take your salary and there is nothing to go home with. So you can't save, you can't even assist anybody. If you have kids, you can't even pay their school fees. And the reason why we are going through these challenges is because of how visionless this government is. And if they have vision anyway, it will be a very bleak vision. We have the capacity to do certain things we are failing to do. One, food. I mean, in a country that has enormous potential of producing food to feed the Ghanaian people, why must workers spend so much money on something that we have the capacity to produce? They spend so much money because we are hugely import dependent. To the extent that government's own policy decisions, consciously or unconsciously, or government's own, if you like, incompetence, we tend to be spending money on things that we shouldn't be spending money on. And I'll give you a classical example. I farm, and I can tell you that I have thousands of bags of rice lying in the farm. I harvested this rice months ago. The next season has started. And it is not just only me. Honorable Tanko, the former MP for Yaba, even the Minister for Youth and Sports, I farm in his constituency. You have Honorable Ajumamenu, just under this government, the former Minister for Health, indicated to me that he also has a lot of rice lying in the farms. They don't have market for them. Why? Because government, who is the biggest or the largest buyer, is unwilling to buy from us. Avnash used to buy rice from farmers directly, and then the state then buys through certain state agencies. Today, NADMO is using imported rice and imported products. Oh, yeah. NADMO. This is a disaster management where people in their lowest of highest of desperation, where people who, as a result of disaster, striked, they are looking for food, and the most quality food is the local food we produce. Government is not buying the food or rice that is produced in Ghana. They are bringing in imported rice. You know the reason? Corruption. Some of these Lebanese and Indians, and I'm not targeting Lebanese and Indians, I'm just making reference to majority of those who are engaged in that. Some of them are not even Ghanaian citizens. They bring in these goods, and when they bring in, the person who is at NADMO or buffer stock, they prefer to get the rice from them because of the cut. Or someone at the Flagstaff house may be sitting there and directing the NADMO, don't buy the rice that is produced in Ghana. This person will supply rice. It's just shocking that NADMO is still using imported rice and imported products. Buffer stock is shocking that they are still using imported rice and imported products. School feeding, shocking that they are still feeding these kids with imported rice. It simply doesn't make sense. But you see, when I say we have the capacity to produce enough, and because of the incompetence and the corruption that this government is associated with, in 2014, President Mahama was able, with his vision, to reduce the importation of foreign rice into this country by 40% and increase the production of local rice by 60%. So you see a direct correlation between the reduction of imported rice into this country and the production of local rice. Government is the biggest buyer. So assuming that government decides with a policy decision that, look, school feeding, henceforth, you are not going to feed the students with imported rice, except local rice. NADMO, you are not going to support people, either disaster victims, with any rice except what? Local rice and not imported rice. Now, if we're able to do this, why can't we do that now? It has to do with what my brother said, the quality of leadership. Look, by 2016, we were spending a little over $500 million for importation of rice and poultry products into this country. Do you know how much we spend now to import rice and poultry products? Over $2 billion. And these are not my figures. Find out from the Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Finance. Over $2 billion. So what it simply means is that every year we have to mop around in the domestic market to get the over $2 billion to bring in things we have the capacity to produce. So when you do so, you are reducing the amount of dollars in circulation. And when you reduce the supply of dollar in circulation, what happens to price? It goes. It's a simple law of demand and supply. The higher the supply, the lower the lower the price, and the lower the supply, the higher the price. So why can't government do that? So if we're able to do this, why can't we do that? So I'm saying that a lot of these issues, and the moment you have such, you are spending more money in important things you have the capacity to produce, and then what happens to the dollar? The CD ratio, it escalates, and it has a boomerang effect on every single item because you are heavily import dependent. Again, has to do with Galamsey. You have a president who vowed that he was putting his presidency online, that if he is not able to stem the tide on Galamsey, he virtually was going to resign. We are worse off. Another major issue has to do with what we all discussed earlier, corruption. Corruption, all these things, the refusal to buy goods that are produced, all those things border on corruption. Now, last point has to do with the chemicals we use even in producing some of these things. For that so long a time, we have not been able to come out with our own organic way of getting fertilizer for our farms. There have been individuals who have done that. Even those from whom we get such a cheaper price. For example, from Russia, you have a president who goes to say that I am with you, I'm against Russia. The very year the president made that statement on this Wagner, our trade relations with Russia was over $140 million. And you think that with this animosity, lack of trust, they would want to engage us in such businesses? Look, we would want to see a global peace. But what business do you have to do with a conflict that is happening between, if you like, two powerful states? Ours is to preach peace, but we don't begin to get ourselves involved in such. You have a president who speaks recklessly. So the moment you do some of those things, they have consequences. So I think that for us, the state must take the lead. We have done it in the past. We had state enterprises that have all been sold. State lands have been sold. The other day, I said it on the floor of Parliament, that they share government lands like Kilowilly or like Granos, and they were uncomfortable with it. Local government workers in Tamale, comrade, you know the road, if you are going to estates, the Senate Road, where you have accommodation of they have all been sold. Prisons officers, the accommodations have been sold. You go to Tamale West Hospital, accommodation that was supposed to be accommodating doctors and medical staff have all been sold, and people are building with speed. So you are denying them adequate salary. You have created the economic mess. Even where they are supposed to be accommodated, you are denying them. I think that is so frustrating. That is what I just have to say on this.
Right, thank you very much. Finally, let me come to Comrade Pratt.
Well, I think that the strike by CROSAG is a legitimate strike. Of course, it has led to a near shutdown of government business, but I think it's legitimate. I had a chat with a worker in one of the ministries, and this worker spends 100% of his total monthly earnings on transportation to and from work. There are other workers whose remuneration is not enough to cater for their transportation from home to work and back. So what are they really working for? The conditions of work of the Ghanaian working people is so horrible that they need to struggle, in order to get, better conditions. And I have no difficulty at all completely endorsing the strike, of CROSAG and other working people in all sectors, of the national life. This morning, myself and Alaji Mutala were discussing Article 71 office holders and their remuneration and so on. It doesn't make sense to pay Article 71 office holders so much and pay other working people so little. Some time ago, we looked at the benefits of presidents, when they retire. And to our shock, we discovered that presidents in retirement earn more than sitting presidents. I mean, unbelievable. This is not sustainable. This has to change. And I'm surprised that this has become a strike by CROSAG, when indeed it affects all other categories of workers, and perhaps the time is coming very soon where all workers will act together and with one voice demand better conditions of service.
Thank you, Comrade Pratt. Our time is up already. Thank you, Comrade Mutala Mohammed. Thank you, Nana Sapong, who is political aide to Alan Chairman. It's been a pleasure hosting the morning show in Kwame Osudanso's stead this morning. And also to you, our cherished viewers who watched from all parts of the country and all other parts of the continent. We are extremely grateful for your time. Let me also acknowledge our YouTube viewers. It appears that these days we have more YouTube viewers than those of you who watch on Facebook. So kudos to those of you who've been watching us on YouTube. We are extremely grateful for your time, Facebook as well, and those of you who watch us from other parts of the African continent through the 46 other African countries. We are extremely grateful. I'll catch you same time tomorrow on the show. Do have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.